and welcome to a chat summary of Week 4 in the Overwatch League. This video also contains the results to the community MVP votes for Week 4. This week's homestand was hosted by the Houston Outlaws. The highlights from it were Houston finally picking up their first win, Atlanta making their debut by decking Toronto but then they got decked by Paris, and London have extended their win streak to 3 games, which is fairly impressive for the young side. Now we'll move on to the first match of the week, between the New York Excelsior and the Florida Mayhem. New York won 3-0, taking all the maps with relative ease, winning Ilios 2-0, Kings Row 4-3, and Temple of Anubis 2-1. New York were left at 4 wins and 1 loss, and a map ratio of +9. This was New York's only match for the homestand, so at the end of it, they were left in 4th. While for Florida, this was not their only match as they played another one the next day. So, they were left at 1 win and 2 losses, with a map ratio of -3. Now, moving on to the community MVP votes, Libero would get the 3 points, with a percentage of 75.8. Hotbot would get more points, taking the 2, with a percentage of 46.2. While Nene would get his first point, with a percentage of 41.8. For New York's one sentence summary, I decided to put Libero provides New York with what was needed. And in my opinion, New York needed a consistent May player, and Libero did really well in this match and was very consistent at a high level of play. Who Are You just couldn't provide that in my opinion. I reckon with just a little bit more practice, Who Are You will be able to provide that as well. Well, for Florida, I put, where does this team sit? Because after this match, I really didn't know how to rate this team, because their 3-0 losses had come to Philly and New York, while their only win had come against Houston. So it's fairly difficult to judge where they are when your losses are to the 2 of the best teams in the league and your wins against the worst team in the league. Now, we move on to Atlanta's debut match against the Toronto Defiant, which Atlanta took quite easily, winning it 0-3. They first won the PAL 0-2, Blizzard World 0-1, and then Temple of Anubis 1-2. Toronto were left at a record of 1 win and 2 losses, and a map ratio of -2, but Toronto would play again the next day, which would alter their standing. And the same goes for the Atlantic Reign. They were 1 win and 0 loss with a map ratio of +3, but they would also play the next day, which would also alter their standing. Moving on to the community MVP votes for this match, Baby Bay would easily get the 3 points, with his percentage of 84.6. Erster would get the 2 points, with a percentage of 53.8, while Gator would get the 1 point, with a percentage of 51.6. For Toronto's one sentence summary, I decided to put sloppy, because they were just plain sloppy in this match. They were outdone in every single aspect of it, and it never looked like they were in the match whatsoever. Atlanta outplayed them in every single way, and it wasn't even close. While for Atlanta, I put statement made, because in this match, at the end of it, it seemed as if Atlanta were making a statement, that they were trying to show that they are going to be a top team this year. And then the next match against Paris happened, so we'll talk about that when that happens. Now, we move on to the finale of Day 1, the London Spitfire versus the Houston Outlaws. The London Spitfire would barely edge the Outlaws here, barely stopping the reverse sweep. First winning Busan 2-0, and then Blizzard World 2-1. But Houston would bite back, taking Temple of Anubis 1-2 and Junkertown 2-3. But then London would take the last map, Ilios 2-1. This left London at 2 wins and 2 losses, with a map ratio of -2, while Houston left at 0 wins and 5 losses with a map ratio of -11, but both teams would play again the next day, which would alter their standings. Now, moving on to the community MVP votes, Glister would easily get the 3 points, with his percentage of 76.9. J-Mac would get the 2 points, with his percentage of 40.7, while Sanguinar would get the 1 point, with his percentage of 30.8. For London's one sentence summary, I decided to go with barely escaping the scare, because they barely escaped Houston here. I think London's underestimation of Houston cost them the 3rd and 4th map, and almost a match. And I think London need to drop this tendency to underestimate their opponents maybe, because I think this is what may have helped them lose the third and fourth map against Houston. Well, for Houston's one sentence summary, I decided to put, are the pieces coming together? I chose this because Houston actually got their shit together in this match. They stopped subbing out Raucus and Repel and just kept Raucus in for the whole match, and they started using two different DPS duos that worked really well together, and they almost came close to their first win as well. Now, we move on to the first match of day 2, the Boston Uprising versus the Philadelphia Fusion, which the Philadelphia Fusion won 0-3. They won Lijiang Tower 0-2, Kings Row 1-2, and Hanamura 1-2. This left Boston at 1 win and 2 losses, with a map ratio of -5, which left them 9th at the end of the week, the same as last week. While for Philadelphia, this left them at 5 wins and no losses, with a map ratio of +11, which left them 1st, the same position as last week as well. Moving on to community MVP votes for this match, Carpe would extend his lead even further, taking the 3 points with his percentage of 70.3. Sato would get the 2 points with his percentage of 59.3, while Funny Astro would get the 1 point with his percentage of 41.8. For Boston's one sentence summary, I put, don't need to be disappointed, because in my opinion, they don't need to be disappointed. You're playing Philadelphia, and you're Boston. That's not meant to be an insult, but Philadelphia have spent so much more on good players this year than you guys have. So losing to them 3-0, it really shouldn't be that surprising, and it shouldn't be that disappointing, in my opinion, since it was probably going to happen anyway. For Philadelphia, I put perfect record continues. I chose this because, well, their perfect record continues. Not only in their win-loss ratio, but also their win-loss ratio on control maps and assault maps, as they are yet to lose a control map or an assault map as well. The next match of the day was between the Paris Eternal and the Atlanta Reign. The Paris Eternal upsetted the Reign 3-1. They first took Busan 2-1, and then Kings Row 3-1. Atlanta would bite back and take Hanamura 1-2, but Paris would finish the job on Dorado, winning it 3-2. This would leave Paris' record at 3 wins and 1 loss, with a map ratio of +5, leaving them 5th at the end of the week. While for Atlanta, this left them at 1 win and 1 loss, with a map ratio of +1. This left them 7th at the end of the week. Moving on to the community MVP votes for this match, Exy would continue his perfect 3-point run, taking the 3 points with his percentage of 86.8. Hanbin would take the 2 points with his percentage of 68.1, while FD God would take the 1 point with his percentage of 51.6. For Paris' one sentence summary, I decided to put, this isn't even my final 4. The reason I chose to do this is because Paris beat Atlanta, a predicted top 3 team, and they don't even have Sparkle yet. In my opinion, that makes Paris look absolutely terrifyingly good. I don't think any teams other than maybe San Fran or maybe Vancouver could beat them at this rate, because they just look so good and they're not even at their full strength yet. For Atlanta's one sentence summary, I decided to put Plan B needed because in this match, they didn't have a Plan B. They stuck with the same composition and the same players throughout the whole match, and it just plain didn't work. They didn't have anything up their sleeves, and they didn't play the way they did against Toronto, which made it seem as if they only planned for Toronto and not this very impressive Paris side, which cost them the win here. Moving on to the next match of the day, London beat Florida 3-2. Florida took the first map 1-2. London would then take Iconworld 2-1. Florida would then take Horizon Lunar Colony 3-4, but then London would finish the job, taking Havana 3-2 and Oasis 2-0. This left London's record at 3 wins and 2 losses, with a map ratio of -2. This left them 6th at the end of the week. Well, for Florida, this left them at a record of 1 win and 3 losses, with a map ratio of -4, which left them equal 11th at the end of the week. Moving on to the one sentence summaries and the community MVP votes, Glister would easily take the 3 points with his percentage of 86.8. Banar would take the 2 points with his percentage of 31.9, while J-Mac would take the 1 point with his percentage of 29.7. For London's one sentence summary, I decided to put young talent putting their pieces together, because that's what this match looked like to me. The young talent from London were putting all their pieces together and they are becoming a really strong team. I personally think that they are a strong chance for the play-ins at this rate, and maybe the playoffs if they can do well. For Florida's one sentence summary, I decided to put expectations not as high anymore. I chose to do this because they just don't look good. I mean, they have the talent, they have Gargoyle, they have Gangnam Jin, they have Yaki, but they're just plain not that good in my opinion. When compared to the teams above them, and some of the teams that are yet to play, it looks like they don't have a chance at making the playoffs or play-ins at this rate. Moving on to the final match of the day, the Toronto Defiant versus the Houston Outlaws. Houston won this match and got their first win, 1-3. Toronto won Nepal, 2-1. Then Houston would win the next 3 maps, taking Kings Row, 3-4, Horizon Lunar Colony, 0-1, and Dorado, 1-2. This left Toronto at 1 win and 3 losses, with a map ratio of -4, which left them equal length at the end of the week. While Houston were left at 1 win, finally, 5 losses, and a map ratio of -9, which left them 13th at the end of the week. Moving on to the community MVP votes for this match, Blase will get the well-deserved 3 points, with his percentage of 80.2. Dante would get the 2 points with his percentage of 59.3, while Jexay would get the 1 point with his percentage of 46.2. For Toronto's one sentence summary, I put forcing change costs the game, because in my opinion, Toronto were trying to force change into their team composition, in most of the maps that is. A quick explanation for this is, I think after their match against the Atlanta Reign, Toronto may have had the thought process that, oh, we got decked by Atlanta, this will not work ever again, let's just play the meta now. And the meta is just something they don't seem very comfortable with, and they just force something that it seems they weren't ready for, or they force something they're not good at. Well, for Houston, I put pulling through for the home crowd, because Houston pulled through for their crowd unlike Washington or Dallas. This was huge for Houston, finally picking up their win and in front of their crowd and on the last day of their homestand. I think this was a successful homestand for Houston, especially, well, definitely because they actually got a win. Now, we move on to the community MVP leaderboards. Carpe is in first with 14 points. Exy is in second with 12 points, while Hopper and Glister are tied in third with 9 points. Corey is in fifth with 8 points. Haxel and Sato are tied in sixth with 6 points, while Jonak, Twilight, KSP, Decay, Sabiolbi, and Shawfor are tied in 8th on 4 points. You guys can read the rest of the rankings, but one thing I will note is that there are finally 10 support players who have gotten points, so good on them. Now, moving on to the Overwatch League standings. First, second, third, fourth, and fifth remain the same, with Philly being in first, Vancouver being in second, San Fran being in third, New York being in fourth, and Paris being in fifth. London have shot up to 6th, up 4 spots from 10th. Atlanta are in 7th, up from 12th, 5 spots up, while Valiant remain in 8th, and Boston remain in 9th. Washington have shot up 1 spot to 10th because of other teams losing, while Toronto have dropped 5 spots, and Florida have dropped 4 spots to 11th. Houston have shot up 7 spots to 13th, while the 5 teams who are yet to play have dropped down 2 spots. The LA Gladiators have dropped down 1 spot, and the Dallas Fuel have also dropped down 1 spot because Houston have actually got a win now. Thank you to everyone who watched this video, and a huge thank you to the 90 people who actually voted in this week's polls, even though the matches were fairly boring. And I'll see you all for next week's community MVP results and summary of week 5.